This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Bat Books for Beginners is a podcast. Bat Books are comics about Batman. Bat Books can be awful or so lovely. Bat Books for Beginners helps you find. If you buy Bat Books, we can tell you which books to buy and which to stay away. Chris and Gerry will always bring to you what you need to help you find your way. Bat Book for Beginners is a podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of TBU's Bat Books for Beginners, episode 200. My name is Gerry.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your hosts.
On Bat Books for Beginners, we will examine story arcs with Batman and related characters. We'll give you the historical background of the book, break down the plot and the art, and give you our opinions so you can decide for yourself if they're worth a read.
Today's Bat Book Chris and I are covering is Batman Reborn. Now, Chris, before we get started on this book, I just wanted to point out that this is the 200th episode of Bat Books for Beginners.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that something?
It's a milestone.
Definitely. Chris and I both wanted to thank everyone for all the support you give us, but also to the great group of folks that came before us. We want to thank a couple of people that have been, hosted this show over the years, don't we, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. We got a lot of people to thank.
Yeah.
First off, I think we had Nick Wheatley, who hosted the show from the very beginning, and he went all the way through episode 120.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite an achievement.
Yes, it is.
And then who took over after that, Gerry? Was that John and Melinda?
John and Melinda took over from episode 121 through 126.
And I think that's around the time I started listening, then I had to backtrack.
Right. Then after that, John and Dylan did it from 127 to 149.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they had a great run themselves, too. Yeah.
They surely did. It's a great idea for a show, right?
Absolutely.
Dustin and I guess Nick, kicking this off and just coming up with this idea that, helping beginners get on board to the Batman universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone that's done this show has had that as a goal, and Gerry and I are really be proud of taking our turn. Gerry, was this venture along the lines of what you expected? I certainly didn't know I'd meet this many friends along the way.
Definitely not. This was, a real eye-opener and really, I think, got us introduced to a lot of terrific people that do, similar things.
Absolutely. And I am so surprised at my opinions and how they've changed over the years with certain material and certain titles. I thought going in with a few of the trades that we were looking at, I came in with the attitude, well, I read this before and I didn't really, I kind of dismissed a few things that we looked. And this forced me to look at it with a different sort of lens
Yeah.
and be a little more critical, be a little more harsher in some areas, and be a little more forgiving in others.
Yeah.
And my opinion, I have to say, has changed on a few of the titles that I really didn't care for back in the day, but for the most part, I think, over the past 50 episodes, they aged better than I expected. Now, some of them did not, but I
Some
would
were
say,
of their time.
Yes, thank you. Exactly right. But, I really am glad that I was asked to join the show with you and to re-examine some of the things that I looked at previously. But how cool is it to be asked, hey, would you like to read some Batman comics and talk about them on a podcast?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. And teamed with Jerry Green, who's done a lot of heavy lifting with the podcast and with his music and editing talents, have really done a superior job to put a great package out there.
Oh, thank you. And, your knowledge of the Batman universe and the comics universe in general has been invaluable.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome. So let's get some of that knowledge out and talk about Batman Reborn.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry. Hey, I got to ask, John Denver by chance?
Oh, yes. In fact, it is. Yep. Little sunshine on my shoulder.
Boy, I remember that. There was a time.
Yes,
I don't know where I was living. You could not really evade John Denver. I mean, every time you put on the radio, I mean, whether the station was pop or country, top 40, there was a lot of John Denver.
Yep.
And I mean, he was it.
Yeah, we had a cassette of his music and took it on road trips in a little tape recorder I had.
Yeah. That was a good point because just so many hits.
Yeah,
so many hits. Thank God I'm a Country Boy. Sunshine on My Shoulder. Oh, geez.
Rocky Mountain High.
Rocky Mountain High. Yes, Country Roads.
Yep.
Oh yeah, great stuff.
Grandma's Featherbed.
Yes, thank you. My gosh. Wow, yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Good times. Okay. Well, hello, Bat fans. Thank you for spending a part of your day with us today. Batman Reborn is not to be confused with Batman Rebirth. It's a 168-page full-cover, softcover trade paperback that was published by DC Comics in April 2011. This trade collects the title Batman and Robin, issue numbers 1 through 6. Those issues were cover dated August 2009 through January 2010, and those individual issues were each cover priced at $2.99. This trade paperback has gone through several printings, which might be a tip-off as to how good this might be. It should be noted that there also exists a hardcover slipcase edition that collected the first 16 issues of this title, and that big massive tome was 488 pages, and it retailed for a whopping $99.99. If you're interested in obtaining this trade, online vendors appear to have copies around $10 to $12, but at the time of this recording, this appears to be available on Comixology and Kindle for a mere $5.99.
Oh.
Yeah, not too bad. Now, for our creative teams, as per usual, I'll give some historical background based off of online resources and my memory. Our writer is Grant Morrison. He's been mentioned on our show numerous times. Let's see. Morrison was born on January 31st, 1960 in Glasgow, Scotland. That makes him 59 years old. He was educated at Allen Glen School. Hey, I'm not familiar with it, but hey, that must be something. Allen Glen School, where his first portfolio of art was rejected, by career guidance teachers, and they encouraged him to work at a bank. Ouch! Oh wow. Well, that's not a bad gig. I tried to work at a bank once. Yeah. In the early 1980s, though, he was in a band called the Mixers. Hey, fellow musician there. Some of his early comics work was in the UK series 2000 AD. I think that's where a lot of UK talent really broke in on that title. Now, I first encountered his work in the late 1980s in the DC title Animal Man, which I highly recommend seeking out if you're not familiar with it already. With Grant Morrison, it might be too long to list all of his credits here, but I'd say his more notable work would include his work on Doom Patrol, JLA. He's also the co-creator of the sci-fi TV series Happy, which stars Christopher Maloney and Patton Oswalt. He's also written for the New X-Men, for Marvel Comics, and All-Star Superman, which is a trade I would recommend as well. Now, the latter two, which I mentioned, were also done with Frank Quitely on the artwork. And Frank Quitely also drew the first 3 issues of the work we're covering today, so let's talk about him for a little bit. Frank Quitely was born in 1968 in Scotland as Vincent Degan. Now, according to at least one online source, Frank Quitely, a spoonerism of quite frankly, as he did not want his family to know what his work was, worried that they might have found his comic work a bit too upsetting. I first encountered his work on the first American stuff that he did, and that was the Doom Patrol spin-off title Flex Mentallo, and that was, way back in 1996? Man, it doesn't seem that long ago,
No,
but
it doesn't.
1996. Holy cow, time has flown. He's also done work on The Authority as well as the aforementioned titles. Philip Tan drew the latter 3 issues of this. He was born in 1978 in the Philippines. Other credits include Uncanny X-Men, Spawn, Green Lantern, and DC Comics' The Outsiders. Over on Amazon.com, this particular trade paperback has a rating of 4.4 stars out of 5, based on 193 reviews. Hey, that's pretty high of stuff we looked at recently. And over on Goodreads.com, this has a rating of 4.09 stars out of 5, based on, 17,699 ratings. They just didn't quite cross that 17,700 mark yet. I'll have to get over there maybe to bump that up. And 377 reviews. Now, while I am sure all of those critics were very honest and trustworthy people, just what do Gerry and I have to say about this book, though? Okay, now stay tuned, dear listener, and with that, I shall turn it back over to you, Gerry.
Oh, thanks, Chris. So we're going to talk about this story after a few messages from some of our friends.
Beautiful as Aphrodite, wise as Athena, stronger than Hercules, swifter than Mercury. Explore the 75-year history of the Amazon princess with Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace, a monthly podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, and at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com.
Welcome back. So here is the story of Batman Reborn. Dick Grayson is Batman and Damian is Robin. The pair are having a car chase with Toad and his gang. These baddies are working for Professor Pig. Damian has retrofitted the Batmobile to fly, which comes in useful in driving Toad's car into the river. Toad emerges from the water into the waiting arms of the dynamic duo. He's carrying a suitcase full of dominoes and is sent to GCPD jail. What is Pig up to? A man whose face is on fire is ejected from a car in front of GCPD headquarters. Cops come to his aid, but it seems to be a kind of natural state for the guy, and he attacks the cops. Some other circus performers get out of the car and assault GCPD headquarters to break their friend Toad out of jail. Dick and Damian respond to the bat signal. They deal with the chaos at GCPD headquarters. They subdue the attackers, but Toad has used poison in a hidden domino to kill himself. Dick is upset because 4 cops were killed and many were seriously wounded. He feels like he failed. He's critical of Damian's performance. The little guy really is not a team player. Damian gets angry at the criticism and takes off on his motorcycle. Alfred gives Dick a pep talk. A man and his daughter Sasha are kidnapped by Professor Pig. The man is into some shady stuff and has betrayed Pig. Pig wants to make people perfect with his masks. He gets a flaming hot pig mask on the man's face for his trouble. He does the same to his daughter. Damian stumbles across Pig and his gang. The daughter in the pig mask tries to warn him, but Pig and his gang sneaks up and captures him and ties him to a chair. Pig starts to work on Damian, but he escapes his bonds and attacks just as Dick Bats crashes into the room. They fight off Pig and his Dolotrons. Sasha asks what happened to her face. She sets Pig on fire. Pig goes to escape on a roller coaster car, which crashes and knocks Damian out. Pig goes to kill him, but Dick hits him with an ATV. Damian realizes Dick just saved his life. They go in search of Sasha, but can't find her. She must have escaped. They let Gordon know Pig's plan, to spread disease via aerosol throughout Gotham. Gotham will become addicted to this virus and need him to supply their fix. He will turn the whole city, every man, woman, and child, into junkies and only he can give them what they need. Dick finds the antidote and gives it to Gordon to administer to anyone that catches the virus. So it turns out, when you try to take pigs' masks off people, their faces come off too. Yuck. Yeah. Sasha is in the hospital and kills her father. She attacks the guards that try to stop her. Then Red Hood arrives and asks Sasha to join him in eradicating crime from Gotham. She changes her name to Scarlet and goes off with him. The pair tussle with the supervillain Lightning Bug and kill him. On the scene, Batman and Robin find a red business card declaring vengeance against crime. Penguin's meeting with some crime bosses and declares he's in charge of the Gotham mobs. Someone named the Flamingo is on his way to Gotham. Flamingo is also called the Eater of Faces. Red Hood and Scarlet arrive and kill many of the mobsters. Red Hood is just about to kill Pengy when Batman and Robin arrive. Dick recognizes that Red Hood is Jason Todd. Penguin escapes out the window with an umbrella parachute, like he does. Jason tells Dick that with Batman gone, he's going to take crime fighting to the next level, with all the killing and whatnot. They fight. Scarlet catches Damian and threatens to kill him. Dick lets them leave and then arrests Penguin. Turns out, Gothamites support Jason's use of murderous force to subdue crime. Back at Jason's hideout, Red Hood takes off his mask thing. He now has let his hair grow to its natural reddish color, but it now has a gray streak. A small plane is on the tarmac at Gotham Airport, and the people inside are dead. The killer ate all their faces. The Flamingo, enforcer for the Penitente cartel, is in town. Batman and Robin find Jason and Scarlet and fight. Scarlet gives Damian an extreme electric shock. He is staggered. See, Jason knows the electrical weaknesses of the Batsuits, and he also shocks Dick. Ouch. Red Hood and Scarlet tie Dick and Damian to chairs, stripped to their skivvies. He sits them in front of a webcam and tells the internet that when a phone number gets 1 million calls, he's going to turn on the webcam and expose Batman and Robin. He's not so good with knots, though, and Damian's able to get free. Flamingo arrives and shoots Jason. He goes to rip Scarlet's mask off and therefore her face off, but Jason shoots Flamingo in the shoulder, which frankly doesn't seem to do any damage. Batman and Robin emerge in their suits. The Caped Crusaders and Scarlet fight Flamingo. She slices his face, but Flamingo just laughs. Jason gets the creep in the bucket of a backhoe and piles a ton of debris on top of him, trapping him. Damian is hurt. He can't feel his legs. Talia al Ghul's paramedic team arrives to fix up Damian. My guess is he's going to be okay. Jason and Dick argue about boundaries. The two fight, and the cops have to hold Batman back. What's up with Batman? Scarlet takes off in a car. She eventually works the pig mask off, leaving behind a skinless face, and leaves Gotham. The end. Whew. So, Chris and I are going to talk about our feelings for this story after these words from some of our friends.
When you talk about comics, does it sound something like this?
Look, you can't put the Superman number 77s with the 200s. They haven't even discovered red kryptonite yet. And you can't put the number 98s with the 300s. Laurie Lamaris hasn't even been introduced.
Or maybe it sounds a little more like this.
You think Mighty Mouse could beat up Superman?
What are you, cracked?
Why not? I saw the other day he was carrying 5 elephants in one hand.
Boy, you don't know nothing. Mighty Mouse is a cartoon. Superman is a real guy. No way a cartoon could beat up a real guy.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Would be a good fight, though.
Hello, I am the constantly caffeinated Clinton Robinson, and my comics discussions can go to both extremes, but generally fall somewhere in between. On the Coffee and Comics podcast, I will review comic stories and other comics-related topics that can be enjoyed over a cup of coffee. So pour the coffee, or other beverage of choice, and join me on the Coffee and Comics podcast, available on iTunes and coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com.
Welcome back. All right, Chris, what'd you think?
Well, Jerry, let me get some broad brushstrokes out of the way first. I haven't mentioned this on our show in a while, whether a trade is suitable for kids or not. And I think it's fair to say this one may not be for younger children. So this has sort of had a Batman and Robin meets a Clockwork Orange vibe to me, if you will, in some places. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm going to talk about the art briefly here a little bit. For some reason, I thought Quietly had a little bit more of a longer run on this thing on the initial start. But no, Philip Tan did the artwork on the latter 3 books. And, when you have a team like Morrison and Quietly, you really think of, a good writer-artist combo. Sure. I really love their stuff on All-Star Superman together. That was a good team that worked well. You think of your Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers, Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams. This is Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb. You really get a, connection with these 2 creators when they work together. It's good stuff. Tan's art really did not disappoint me here, and I thought, once I saw his name attached with this, I confess I had a little mild apprehension, thinking we'd get an art drop-off, but I really didn't feel one here with this. I think everything really went symmetrical with this. Yeah. I have to disclose that I'm not a huge Damian fan. He's never really warmed up to me, and I think with the initial appearance of the character way back in Son of Demon, when he was introduced in the graphic novel, and they said, oh, this is an Elseworlds, oh, wait, it's not, oh, yes, and they kind of flip-flopped a little bit. That said, I don't think he's ever really warmed up to me per se, But, he is what he is, and he's a unique character, and I'll have to give him that. So when I get to my rating, I think I might surprise a few of the listeners out there what they know I think of Damian. Another thing, too, we get sort of like a second generation of Batman and Robin, if you will. And I remember back in the day when, in the 60s, Alfred used to write stories of a what-if nature. And, this was like fanfic before it was even fanfic. Batman was still having a career, but Alfred envisioned and typed these stories with Batman marrying Betty Kane, and they have a son. Batman retires, and they have a redheaded kid, a ginger of all things. And so they carry on, and Alfred writes these stories of Batman 2 and Robin 2, and they wear these literal Roman numerals right on their costumes to denote that they're they can't two. They can't be just called Batman and Robin. They got to have that numeral 2 on there to carry on the thing. And so this was a sort of contemporary take on this, if you will, for a long-time viewer, if you want to look at it through that sort of thing, because Bruce Wayne's always my Batman. You see Dick here. What a characterization of Dick we have in this too. A lot of character development. A lot of scenes where he's coming to near torture, trying to get information from lackeys and thugs, and just really going by graphic means. This is something unique, and I troubling or disconcerting, perhaps. I don't know, but he's Batman, and this is the role of Batman, to try to get things. I mean, how many times have we seen Batman go into bars and rough people up and slap them around to get some information and intel? So that was a sort of unique take and observation, I thought. Yeah. So I really liked this a little more than I thought I would, and I think when this came out, my feelings haven't changed that much. I thought this was not an above average story arc, a little violent in places, but nonetheless, I kind of dug this. Jerry, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I do agree that this is kind of like Dick learning how to be Batman. And Alfred gives him really good advice. Say, you can't be Bruce being Batman. You have to be Dick Grayson being Batman. And you're going to make different decisions than Bruce is, but that's okay. You have to it has to be genuine. You're a good-hearted person. You're going to be a good Batman. So, in general, and this is one of my, this whole, Dick Bat's, run with Damian is really one of my favorite runs. I really like the relationship that develops over the course of several books between Dick and Damian, as well as the growth of Damian as a character. On his own, Damian is really a boring character. He's obnoxious. He's, he doesn't click. But when you team him up with somebody, in this case, Dick, or like with in Super Sons with John Kent, And even in the new 52 Batman and Robin when he was with Bruce? Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Yes.
I like the relationships that you can use with Damian. Even though as a character himself, he's a little shaky. And I just remember, this particular progression, between Dick Grayson and Damian really pays off in Grayson. Remember that Grayson run?
Yes.
In Grayson 12, when Damian thought that Dick was dead, and he had thought he was dead for a while, and Dick wasn't, and he comes back and they have a meeting, and it's just like one of these comic book moments that makes, takes your breath away.
Great callback, Jerry. Excellent call.
I really love that. And all that starts right here in this book. That being said, this is not my favorite book of the run. So it's funny. I don't want to color how I grade this, either whether too strong because I like the run or too critical because, I don't particularly care as much for this issue. I think here Red Hood and Scarlet are, they're an interesting bad crew. It's always interesting having Jason, who's a member of the Bat family, involved as kind of a bad guy. The hood, it's not really a hood. It's more like he's wearing a capsule over his head.
Yeah, it's a kind of dome kind of effect there, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the old, callback to, isn't that what the Joker was originally?
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing. And he has a gray streak in his hair. Is that canon, Chris, that Jason had to dye his hair to be the same color as Dick's? And his hair was really red?
I thought, when we had a couple of incarnations of Jason first, when we first had him appear in Detective Comics in the 80s, he was the son of the circus acrobats. And he was a, reddish-haired chap there. Sure. And then I remember when we retconned it toward the later 80s and post-crisis, we did away with the circus performer appearance was a little too on the nose, I guess, and so they retconned that to the Jason, the tough hooded one. And I always thought his hair was darker colored from there when they sort of reintroduced him with the retcon. Now, somebody could probably correct me, but I think once the retcon happened, they also retconned the hair color as well.
Okay. So, the thing here, right, we have Flamingo, and he eats faces. I mean, and then Pig with his masks that rips your face off. I mean, it's just so gross.
Yeah, I don't know where I land on Professor Pig as a villain. I certainly... one of the more disturbing characters, recent appearance in the current Batman title as we're recording this, first appeared in Batman 666, appropriately enough, that I think Jerry and I covered on a past podcast.
Yep.
I like the creepiness of it, but I just don't know if it's a little too far sometimes. I'm just still trying to get a handle on him. I don't know if I land on a love-hate is too strong of an emotion either way with the pendulum for me. It's sort of mild like, mild dislike
sure.
with him as a villain. I certainly... I think he's at least a more dimensional villain as somebody opposed to, say, Black Mask, who we've discussed on our past podcast, Jerry, as someone who I just don't think is quite as an upper tier villain or somebody who invokes enough fear. And I think they really try with Black Mask to make this character a little more weighted with his role in the Batman universe with, like, say, past encounters of Catwoman and all this, killing But Pig is unique, and I think over time, I think he's slightly creeping up the rogues tier of upper echelon villains. That's not to say I'm thinking he's in the elite class, but I think I certainly call him a B versus a C.
Okay, yeah. And, Black Mask really doesn't have an interesting motive. He just wants to control crime.
Yeah.
Whereas Pig has something a little more interesting. He's trying to perfect people and puts these masks on them to do that. One thing that I thought was really interesting here as the story went on was that people noticed that this isn't the old Batman and Robin, right?
Yes.
Didn't they used to be taller? So I thought that was interesting. And And, really the new dynamic duo, right? They're still working out the kinks of this partnership. This isn't just fighting together. It's being Batman and Robin together. And that is a completely different thing. And Damian, while he's, a murderous little 10-year-old, being Robin is a different thing. And in this book, he gets his butt kicked a lot. And, when Dick saves his life, he's like, did you just save my life? It's a little much. He's a little, he's 10 years old and he's, he's a super manufacturing engineer and mechanic. He can make the car fly, and he's a super assassin ninja. He still has baby teeth.
But those story elements were pretty cool because, there was a lot of times where Dick says, I wish I had that when I was your age, and stuff like that. Those are moments, and those sentences and exchanges are not necessarily to be taken for granted, in my estimation, because,
Sure.
Dick he's trying to be relatable. He's not trying to just be Batman and talk down to Damian as Bruce might, in a sense. It's interesting to see the parallel because, Dick was broken in by a Batman, and now Dick is Batman trying to break in on Robin. So I think it's a really, really unique dynamic, and they're working with new toys, which is really, really cool. And something that I think there's a part of me that says Dick wishes he had this, so he's going to actually make it and do it himself. I think there's the things that, he's thinking outside of the box that Batman may have not come up with, or he might have come up with, but this isn't his mold, so to speak.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting about this is Alfred. I think he's just such the heart and soul of the Bat family. And he's just giving Dick advice and, interacting with the two in just such a gentle way and this little sarcastic way, but really helpful, and kind of knows these kids and really knows what to say.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something I'm afraid I did not have in my notes, but I certainly thought of as the story was going along. There were a lot of great Alfred Dick exchanges in here, which made this go up, in my opinion, with respect to the story and overall trade.
I did want to make one point in this, that there is a homophobic remark. Damian calls Flamingo, who's dressed in kind of a Spanish-y kind of outfit, he calls him gay as an insult, which it kind of took me aback.
Yeah, and, considering how far we've come in recent years, I was really taken aback by that myself. And it makes you wonder if future printings of this continue, will that be edited in some way? Because I was a little shocked, I have to confess, that went by. And I think it'll be interesting to see if this does get edited, and conversely some of the other things in lore with respect to covers or things that kind of flew in the 90s that they just let go with respect, be it slurs, be it language, be it artwork, which sort of borderline on really gratuitous stuff. It'll be interesting to see where things go.
So, in terms of rating, are we going to be like they are on Amazon, or where would you put this?
I guess I'm going to go slightly below Amazon. It was certainly above average, but I don't think this was a masterpiece. And that's always a dilemma when I get to come up with a rating, because, I always hate to land somewhere between, the 3s and the 4s kind of really bother me, because this is where I really hate to land, between the 3s and the 4s and stuff. Okay, let's check it off. Good characterization with Dick. If you're into Dick Grayson, fine stuff here. Alfred, yes. Great observations. Gerry, I will say, I'll be generous right now, and I'll say 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I did like some of the elements, but the violence really, really was off-putting to me in a lot of places on this.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean about that. Would you must-read recommend it?
Considering where the Damian character sort of evolves here, we don't have Bruce in the Saper narrative. Do we have interesting villains? Yes. I will say yes for must read, yes for recommendation, with a slight asterisk. This may not be for everybody.
Yeah.
With respect to violence and some of the things with that. I don't think there was a problem with any of the artwork at all. These are some of the more disturbing villains, if you will. This is a violent group with all the characters involved that we had. This is a different Jason. If you're into Jason, you want to see a little bit of evolution with respect to that character, this is something to explore. So I will say must read, yes. Recommend, yes, but not for everybody. If that makes any sense. I'm sure this will probably turn some Bat fans off, but that's what I'm going to say.
So I'm going to agree with your rating at 3.5.
Okay.
I really, part of it is because I love this run and I know what they're doing. It does get better than this, I think, though. I definitely want to echo your statements about this not being for everyone. This is very violent and disturbingly violent. And I don't think you or I, that's, not why we're reading comics. So you have to keep it at a distance because it's a little bit much. But this is, you can't read, volume 2 and 3 without reading volume 1, I guess.
Sure.
So I would definitely say you should read it with, a little trepidation, right? And I do recommend it, because it is kind of an interesting starting point.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, Chris, you have been up to some other things, haven't you?
Yes.
Over on Batgirl to Oracle.
Yes, thank you so much, Gerry. I'm reviewing the Batman Adventures title. Nightwing, I've got a segment called Night Watch on there, and the Nightwing titles sort of take in a different shipping schedule. So I don't know when Stella's going to drop her next episode of Batgirl to Oracle. I think she's got a shipper spotlight, and then she's going to get back to her regular episodes. So she's got a special episode. I do not appear on it, but she's got a very special guest. So I be sure to check out that episode. And she teased it. I don't know if I should say, but I think it's Mr. Chuck Dixon. So she just recently announced at the time of the recording that she's got Chuck Dixon lined up for that shipper special. So kudos to you, Stella, for getting a great guest for that show. And then you can then, after that episode drops and when she gets back to her regular episodes, you can find me on the Batgirl to Oracle show, where I have a segment where I review the Batman Adventures comic. And these are the stories based on the animated series of the 90s from the comic from the 90s. So just finished issue 15 up to, so I'm chugging right along there. And I'm having a lot of fun with that. You can also find me on a show called Trust Your Cape, which is on the Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop feed. Kudos to Bob, who's doing a yeoman's job of editing all those segments together. And poor Bob and Barbara just really got wiped out by an illness, and I'm really not sure how their health is. But shout out to Bob and Barbara, and you can also find me there. We're going to mention another show that Gerry and I appear on in a moment. But Gerry, before I get there, two of my favorite characters in the Batman lore are Batgirl and Catwoman. And how cool is it that the guy I know who really writes great reviews happens to be covering those two characters? Gerry, can we find those reviews written, and where can we find them?
Yes, go over to the BatmanUniverse.net, and I've been reviewing both Batgirl and Catwoman, and both of them are in a really good place right now, in my opinion. Really enjoying both of them. And you can go over and see all of the great Batman and Bat Family content over at the BatmanUniverse.net. You can also find me out on Twitter, where I tweet my weekly comics and talk about indie comics a lot. Talk about Dark Shadows, and Chris and I both live tweet horror movies on Saturday night at 8 o'clock from hashtag Svengoolie. We watch Svengoolie, which is a show on the MeTV network, and we have an awful lot of fun doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And some old movies that we've seen and some new ones. So, there's been some recent stuff that we have never seen before, at least I haven't, and it's been a lot of fun. Everyone is welcome to join us. It's a great group, and you don't necessarily have to be witty all the time, but it will help. Gerry, I bow to you because you come up with some great singers during the show, and I got to really applaud you and all the Sven pals out there for all the fun times on a Saturday night.
We have so much fun.
Absolutely.
And now folks shouldn't forget to check Chris and I out on the Professor Frenzy Show. So by the time this episode is aired, we will have released 41 episodes of the Professor Frenzy Show. So it's a podcast Chris and I do on indie comics and other pop culture topics. And oh boy, we've been having a great time. There have been some really, really good books we've been covering over there. So you can check the show out and search on iTunes for the Professor Frenzy Show.
Jerry, we were fortunate to get some feedback on our last episode. And over on Twitter, I noticed you had a nice exchange with Nightstar357.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because she tweeted out that she's really enjoying listening to the Professor Frenzy and BTO and Bat Books on the BatmanUniverse.net. Hey, they're talking about the Bat Books for Beginners podcast. And you had a really nice exchange with her. And then, you pointed out some of the things you didn't like with respect to the trade. And she chimed in, not everyone enjoys the same aspects of a book. Yeah. Sometimes people take away different things. Sense can be found within the chaos, just as there is a method in the madness. And really, really nice exchange you had with her. And she really was nice enough to give us a nice shout out. And we can't thank you enough for doing that. That was really good.
Yeah, she really knows her comics.
Oh, absolutely. And we also heard from our good friend Ian Miller. He's from the Batman universe. And now with respect to the show, on our last episode, we reviewed all the multiple books and all these one-shots. Now, Ian knows comics himself, and I really got to give him a shout-out because he's always been a regular contributor with the Comics and Likes and with giving us feedback. And be sure to check him out on the Comics Podcast and check out his writing over on the BatmanUniverse.net with his reviews. Fine stuff. Now, Ian chimed in and said, "Nice! I enjoyed the network a lot because it followed up with Cassandra and the Birds of Prey, Huntress and Misfit particularly. The rest of the stories are indeed setups. Hine wrote a lot of stuff in the Reborn Inc. era. Fabian Nicieza, oddly, didn't quite set things up in network, though. Part of me wonders if there was a lack of agreement or knowledge of what was coming next. An interview with Adam Beechin from the Time on our own site indicates that the editors and writers were still fighting about who would be the next Batgirl. Dustin and Josh did a really great job on the interview, and yes, he did send us a link on that, so perhaps we can include that with the show notes, but I think if you go back to the past show, you can see where Ian put that comment on there, and fine stuff. So we really appreciate that. And thank you for very, very much for taking the time to write and pointing that out.
Yes, thanks.
And we had likes and retweets on our past show from a ton of people, and we can't thank you enough. First up, we heard from Secret Wars and Beyond podcast at Sean42AZ. Hey, he's the co-host of the Secret Wars and Beyond podcast on the Pulp to Pixel podcast network and the Nerdy Dads on the Nerdy Dads network. Paul Shanley at Paul Shanley. Hey, check him out on TBU. We heard from our good friend Dave, Lava Hog at Lava Hog. He's the creator of the podcast Selling Out Show, and you can follow them on Twitter at Selling Out Show. Thanks so much, Dave. We heard from our good friend Green Lantern HG at Green Lantern HG. We heard from Lee T. Lunsford, 2K at LT _Realm Creator. Thanks. I wanted to make sure I got that out right.
Great.
Good friend of ours, Alberto Ramirez at Laredo Art 2018. Hey, check out his artwork. He loves tacos, ice cream, and anything remotely nerdy. Carry on, gentlemen. Thank you. We heard from Sue Schreiner at Schreiner Sue. Christopher Hamby at Chris Hamby Films. Scott X at The Mind of Scott X. Hey, the Batman Universe at Batman Universe. Thanks so much. We heard from Bill Beer. Hey, Bill Beer at Gotham Night 13. He's the host and creator of the Bat Pod, and you can find that podcast feed on Twitter at PodBat. Great stuff. And that's he does that with Joey, and occasionally Bob will show up too. Bob Rowland from and
that was a good episode.
That was Bob is the Eraser and Barbara is Catwoman. Yes, more please. Yes, anytime they come on there, that was a fun show. And I really like it when Bob does the quizzes with Joey, and I got to say, I'm pretty good on those Batman quizzes. Bob, we should go head to head. Bill, we should go head to head sometimes. And Bob too. Bob's, that'd be fun. Me and
would.
Bill and Bob doing a trivia off, because Bob with those quizzes on Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop, and Bill on his quizzes on this show. Yeah,
that sounds like that could be a show.
Bad Jeopardy. We should do we should do a Bad Jeopardy. That'd be a lot of fun. Okay, and then we heard from Jared Albrecht, the art sale artist, trademark. Oh. Yes, very good, Jared, at Yard Sale Artist.
Awesome.
He does a really good job with his stuff, and I got my copy of Hamilton versus a Werewolf Tale, and I know you did too, Jerry. And boy, check out his artwork and a lot of fun stuff there. Now we heard from Robin Stevens at Robin 031 Robin, and we heard from Tommy Jackson Jr. at Lil Tom 2099. And we didn't hear from these people, but we want to give a shout out to some of our friends since this is the 200th episode. I will be remiss if I overlooked someone, but want to give a shout out to Darren and Ruth Sutherland, and you can find their fine shows at rad_adventures on Twitter. Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop at Gal Walks Into Gal Walks, a great show. Shout out to Reggie at Reggie and Chris Sheehan at Ace Comics, and just for their support over the past 50 episodes. We can't thank you enough, because I remember when Chris tweeted out a picture that he was actually listening to our show in his car, and I was like, wow, we really got a listener. And that was the first time I felt, that someone was actually listening. I thought it was really cool that Chris and Reggie took the time to get on board and support us like that. And shout out to Randy over at Randy Andrews 1, and Gen 13 Files. These comics dirty. Great support with the Soundtrack Alley show. We can't thank you enough. And shout out to Herman Lowe from Long Box of Darkness. And we thank you very, very much for all the times that you've given us a like and given us a shout out. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But sure. I apologize if I overlooked you, and I know we've made a lot of friends throughout our 50 episodes, and we really can't thank you enough just to give us the like and even the retweet with all your sincere comments and just pointing people to our show has really meant a lot to myself and to Jerry, and we really can't thank you enough. And if you've done that once, my sincerest thanks and gratitude go out to you. If you're listening right now, I wish I could make you smile and just say thank you, and I hope you smile, and I really can't thank you enough for spending a part of your time with us. And Jerry and I really love to talk about Bat books, and we just can't thank you for spending your day and listening to us talk about them.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone. So that's all Chris and I have for today. Please join us next time when we continue our coverage of Bat books. My name is Jerry.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you for listening to Bat Books for Beginners.
Bat Books for Beginners is a podcast. Bat Books are comics about Batman. Bat Books can be awful or so lovely. Bat Books for Beginners helps you find. If you buy Bat Books, we can tell you which books to buy and which to stay away. Chris and Jerry will always bring to you what you need to help you find